Good morning once again from Garnet Canyon. Another awesome day to be outside. Today we're in the South Fork and we are going up to Cloudveil Dome and from there traversing over to South Teton. The usual disclaimer, climbing here is inherently dangerous. Please do use your own discretion, make your own risk assessment. Having said that, the purpose of this video is to, one, help you navigate, and two, help give you some video to allow you to make your own risk assessment. It's around 7 a.m. and I'm walking up to the saddle of Cloudveil Dome. A couple things I want to mention before we go further. I'm starting from Cloudveil and traversing over to South Teton. Now this can be done in either direction. I think most groups probably would go the opposite way. It especially makes sense if you're doing one of the bigger traverses. The reason I'm starting on this side is basically because it minimizes the amount of downclimbing I have to do up on the ridge, because it's a net ascent between Cloudveil Dome and South Teton. The obvious downside is having to downclimb the ice cream cone, which is probably the crux of this climb. However, on the other hand, the snowfield to the east of Gilkey Tower I get to do on the ascent. And then along the southwest couloir of South Teton will be my biggest descent, which is probably the easiest part of this entire traverse. Also, any groups bringing ropes with them, being able to rappel the long descents going west to east would make a lot more sense. But for me, being solo, going east to west, I think makes a lot more sense. Only other point I want to mention is that to the east of Cloudveil Dome, Ne Percé is often included in the traverse. I'm going to skip that today. The reason for that is that obviously making this video takes a lot of time, and I think I have a limited weather window. So if there's anybody who would like to see that ascent, just let me know. I'll do that in a future video. If you're coming up here in the early summer, you might have to traverse this snowfield. However, it's mid-August already and there's plenty of room to avoid it on the rocks. Alright, up onto the saddle of Cloudveil Dome. Views down into Avalanche Canyon are always lovely, though it is a humbling experience if you get too close to that edge, and we will later on. From here, it's literally just a few feet on a footpath that ends right at the granite face. And after that, we're going to be scrambling up in the direction of this tower in front of us. I'm underneath the pinnacle. We're coming up to the crux move, although from this point there are several options. We can traverse around to the left, and then there's a short pitch that I've seen regarded as like a low class 5. And then to the right there's a little chimney system that's probably more class 4, a little bit exposed. I did the little pitch on the left last time, so I think I'm going to attempt the chimney system on the right this time. Having climbed on both sides of the pinnacle, I can say for certain while the left is slightly more technical, the route finding is also a lot more direct, and probably the total exposure time is shorter. On the right hand side, once I found the right route, it was pretty easy, but it took me a couple tries to get the correct route. Basically from the base of the pinnacle, I stayed low and moved to the right further from the pinnacle, and then switched back on some rock. From here, I'll be moving up toward the right, towards some golden rocks, into, there's a few couloirs up there. As long as I choose the good route, the hardest part is behind me. At least the hardest part of Cloudveil Dome. After just another minute of scrambling, we have the first summit block in view. On the summit of Cloudveil Dome, I'm actually running a little bit behind schedule on time, so I'm not going to stay here more than a minute. Going forward from this point, a lot of the beta says to stay along the ridgeline. Personally, I found it better to drop in a little bit, on the north side of course. So from the summit of Cloudveil, I'm actually going to head kind of north-northwest to get down lower on the ridge. I'm coming up on the summit approach to Spalding Peak. Well, it is possible to climb the ridge on the left. I think it will be a better option to stay lower at first and then go into a little couloir. I don't know if you can see in this photo where the grass is, but that's going to be where I'm aiming for now. Yeah, I just traversed around the initial ridge line, barely even 100 feet, and then really easy walk up a couloir. This should be the easiest summit of the day, so I don't want to make it any harder than it has to be. I'm going to do a short scramble up to the summit of Spalding Peak, and then backtrack down a little bit to reach the snow bridge over to Gilkey Tower. Spalding Peak summit. As I said before, don't want to spend too much time on any summit. I want to make the most efficient use of my time as possible. We do have a good view of the east face of Gilkey Tower from here. I'm still not sure how wise it is to climb down the east of this, so I'm going to play it safe and traverse back the way I came. Aim for the snowfield. Really slow traverse across the snowfield. Whatever path was in there has been washed away. Definitely didn't enjoy that. But the snow was just soft enough to be able to kick in some steps, and I was getting a really good grip with my axe. So that was my saving grace. But once again, I'm glad I don't have to come down this part. I'm looking at the west face of Spalding Peak. It does look like that ridge line can't be down climbed, though it would be quite exposed. Having said that, it may be a better option if you're going in the opposite direction, because it would prevent you from having to go down the snowfield downhill. We're directly on the base of the Gilkey Tower approach, though I gotta stop for a minute, be mindful that my feet are wet. I was reading somewhere that this was a really difficult descent. Now granted, I'm going up the mountain, I'm not descending. I didn't think it was particularly difficult. I started going to the left at first, and it got hard, so I turned back toward the middle of the ridge, and I thought the middle of the ridge was more manageable. Alright, Gilkey Tower summit, and possibly the most terrifying part of the entire traverse. From here I have two options, and one is to down climb directly on the face of the ridge, and the second one is an exposed ledge around the south side. Last time I did this going from east to west, I took the ledge. If I were going the opposite direction, I would have probably just climbed up the face. It would have been a lot easier than down climbing. As you could probably tell, I worked up the courage to down climb directly on the nose. It's actually not a difficult climb at all. It's one of the places where the exposure just gets to your head. From here, I still do have to drop down a little bit to the south ridge, and it still is quite a bit exposed. Just after the Gilkey Tower ridgeline, and before we come up to this pinnacle, which I don't know the name of, and I'm not crazy enough to climb, there is a notch to drop down into, and in the notch we'll turn right down into a couloir. From the bottom of the couloir we'll traverse over to Blob and then ice cream cone. It's been raining here the past few days. I was a bit worried if anything was wet, it was going to be this section. But so far it looks good. Probably class 4 descent. The down climb went smoothly, but there were a few rocks that felt like they might not want to hold me. So do use caution. And if you're doing this in the opposite direction, it's actually a lot easier to see the route going up than it was coming down. Took me a little bit of trial and error on the descent side. We are nearing the traverse over to the Blob. Over to the west face of Blob. The Blob traverse is actually really easy as soon as you find the right route. There's also a route that goes over the summit, but being that it's already afternoon, I'm going to take the easy way out here. From the west face of Blob, there's a short scramble down into a notch in front of the ice cream cone. I'm sitting in the notch just to the east of ice cream cone. Getting up the east face is just going to be a bunch of zigzags. East face should be quite easy. It's the west face that'll get a little bit complicated. I'm maybe a third of the way up the ice cream cone. Where I'm standing, it's important to identify some ledges that can be useful for traversing around the north. I'm going to go up to the summit first from this side, but I'm not certain which way I'm going to descend yet, so I might come back this way and traverse. The summit of ice cream cone. Good views back the way we came, all the way over to Gilkey Tower. On the other side we have a good view of the east ridge of South Teton. Coming up the east face of here was quite simple. A little bit exposed, but there were a lot of different routes I could have taken. It's coming down the west face now that's going to be the crux. Basically the two options are, one, to go straight down the chimney that's just a few feet away from me, and the second one is to drop back down the east ridge to the ledges and then traverse around to the west face, and then from there down climb the bottom half of the chimney. I actually started down the upper chimney just a short distance, then decided the traverse around the north was much easier. I actually just slipped on a loose rock at the top of the chimney here, so take extra care with your hands. Again, there's some loose dirt beneath me, so loose rock as well. So take extra care to have something to hold on to good. I don't want my feet slipping out from under me here. Okay, I'm gonna bail on this and go back to the traverse. Decided that the traverse is a lot easier than this. So now I'm down on the traversing ledges. This will take me back to the chimney about midway down. So a little bit less down climbing. There are some exposed ledges here too, so nothing really easy about this. From where I'm standing, I have to go up just a little level, and then I'm almost back at the chimney again. Okay, down climbing ice cream cone, or at least the lower half. I'll admit I chickened out and skipped the upper half. I think I made that look harder than it had to be. My first time coming down felt a lot smoother. Then I came down, set up the GoPro, went up again. Felt like I was struggling. There are a few spots where your feet don't really have anywhere to go. Just dig them into the granite. But there's almost always good handholds, especially on your left side. Last little obstacle is the east ridge of South Teton. Good amount of class 4 rock, but compared to some of the things we've done, it's quite moderate. And there are several routes you can take on it. So I shouldn't let my guard down too early, but it feels like I'm out of danger right now. Worst is definitely behind me. South Teton, just as the clouds are rolling in. Before the thunder comes, I gotta get out of this place. Good news is, it's all easy from here. Northwest couloir descent, and then down into Garnet Canyon, South Fork. Just try to get as far as I can before any raindrops come down. Finally sitting down on the lower saddle between South and Middle Tetons again. Not gonna lie, that was a long day and I'm exhausted. So having said that, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you found it helpful in planning your own trip. As always, I'd love to hear your feedback. What did you enjoy? What can I do differently? And until next time, bye.